Gonzalez, but he's not here to hear it anyways. So a bunch of people had to leave, right, because they couldn't commit to the full day. And for those that got double plates, we're thankful for the ones that left, because we're able to do twice as much, right? So we had a chance to chew on some spiritual word nourishment. We had a chance to chew and nourish ourselves on some real physical food. But we know that we weren't able to cover everything, right? It's a difficult task to be able to just sit here and talk and expound on something that is so profound, so important, and carries so much weight. So we want to make sure we have a chance. Again, by no means are any of us up here an expert. We like to be able to share with you from our experiences, right? To be able to, like the word says, to spur each other on towards love and good deeds and learn from each other and wrestle with some things. And as we do so, can I ask Wayne next? Oh, you, Pastor Chris, you've been quiet all morning. Usually he talks a lot, so if he seems quiet, there's something wrong with him, okay? No, I'm just kidding. Can you open something for me?
Heavenly Father, once again, we come before you, God, and just give you thanks for this blessed day. We thank you, Father, for every single person involved who made this day possible. Everybody from the preachers to the cooks to the people greeting and signing people in, and everything that has to come together perfectly to make such a special day like this profitable. And we just thank you, God, for every single service who gave sacrificially to make that happen. We also thank you for every single person here who supported the conference by purchasing a ticket and coming to hear us. Give them tools and tips to be able to share the gospel that is, as many of the brothers said this morning, something that's not negotiable, something that we are commanded to do, but understandably something that is very, very difficult to do. This world continues to become more and more and more apprehensive to the gospel. It continues to become more and more hostile to the gospel. It continues to show that they believe that it is foolishness, as your word says they would believe. But God, we thank you that we who believe it know that it is the power of God to salvation. And we just pray, Lord God, that you would make us useful servants who are being used powerfully by you, God, here in this life to preach that gospel. Because once we make it into eternity, it's going to be too late. That's the one thing we can't do in heaven is evangelize. And so, again, Lord, make this time sweet and profitable. Would your Holy Spirit be in our midst, helping us to give you our undivided attention, to illuminate our minds, and to light a fire in our hearts. In Christ's name, amen.
Thanks, Pastor Chris. So with that said, we want to open up and just have you guys ask questions, something you want to know more information about, something that you may have a concern about, right, when it comes to putting some of this stuff into practice, something that you didn't really understand and want more clarification. Am I missing anything else? So with that said, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you as the opportunity arises. Young lady?
What?
Can you please stand and thank you.
Is there something that you would recommend to evangelize somebody that has a different spiritual background as far as like Buddhist or a different religion?
Did you guys hear that question?
Yeah.
Anybody feel like they want to answer that?
Your question had to do with if someone has a different background.
Yes.
I think, as Anthony mentioned earlier, it's good to find out what they believe, because you can learn a lot by listening, rather than assuming or presuming what they believe. I think oftentimes we come into a conversation. We may know what a Buddhist believes, or we were pre-persuaded. Often they don't know what they believe. That's one thing to consider too. They may have a distorted understanding of their own worldview, right? So that said, I'll learn what they believe, but I don't spend a lot of time combating that. I do my best to move from hearing what they believe to speaking to something that I know is a reality, that God has put the law on their hearts, right? So I try to get the conversation from there and moving to, when for example, they tell me they believe X, Y, Z about Buddhism. I said, I appreciate that. At some point, I went into the conversation and said, do you mind if I share with you what I believe? Right? You're not being confrontational, you're not challenging their belief system. You might, and when they say yes, this is where, as Anthony outlined, I speak to the law, which God put on their heart. And you can't argue that. God put it there. God created them with a law in their heart. So that's what I try to move to. Regardless of what worldview they happen to hold, whether Mormonism, Buddhist, Muslim, they're all wired in such a way where they realize they need to be justified. And what they do, rather than seeing the need for justification for a holy God, they try to self-justify, right? And that's why it's good to go down, are you good? Right? So that's what I'd say.
Good question. This is my elder from the church, so we go to the same community college to go share the gospel. And one day we're there, and I get done over there preaching. This was last August, I believe. And there's a young woman who's been kind of watching, leaving, and coming back. And she comes up to me, she goes, I just want to let you know, I don't care about Christianity. I'm like, okay, nice to meet you too. And she's like, but I want to talk to you. And she goes, hey, just so you know, basically, I don't care about it. I'm like, that's totally fine. And she goes, I'm Muslim. And I just like look at her, I'm like, okay. She's like, so wait, you're not going to get mad? You're not mad at me? I'm like, no, I'm not mad at you. Like, you were just talking, right? And as a group of us, we start to get into a conversation. And then she mentions, we believe that Jesus is not God. We just believe that, he died on the cross. And I go, I go, but isn't that true that according to the Muslim view, the prophet Isa, Jesus, he never died on the cross. He was actually protected and Allah put someone else on the cross. Isa never died on the cross and was resurrected, right? And she goes, and I always ask, right, because who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I misheard. I go, am I correct in that, right? And she was surprised. She goes, yeah, you're actually right. And she goes, you're the first Christian I've ever met that actually knows something about my belief and isn't calling it demonic and isn't getting on me about it. So one thing I would do is, what he said was great, get as much information as you can, let them talk. And also know, you don't have to even share the gospel with them that day. If you're just telling me more about what you believe, okay, great. And then maybe the next day, hey, I was thinking about what you believe, can I share with you what I believe? And then I would try to know at least a few things. Because if you bring it up, such as the prophet Isa, Jesus never died on the cross, and that means he never resurrected, that opened up the door for me to share the gospel with her. She was willing to listen because she was like, you actually studied my belief. And I told her, I said, well, of course I do. I said, Jesus calls me to love my neighbor as myself. And if I want people not to assume about my beliefs and to study my beliefs, then I probably should do the same thing about yours before I start to speak about it. And she was willing to we've been cool ever since. So that'll be my 2 cents.
One thing I want to say is that every evangelistic conversation doesn't need to be combative, right? You want respect, it goes both ways. So like Izzy said and Anthony said, sometimes you're quiet and you listen to what people have to say, right? If you listen to them, it's almost common courtesy, right? That they now listen to you, right? You want to be heard, listen to them, right? And you're not going to let somebody ramble on for an hour and a half before you finally say, forget it, right? But walk in that tension, be kind. Like, there's one thing that struck me from that pen video is that he said this guy was genuinely nice. He wasn't just trying to butter me up and like empty flattery. He was a really good guy, and that won some credibility with him, right? With the diehard atheist, this Christian got a little bit of credibility. Whether you listen to him or not, he got a little credibility. So, answer your question?
Yes.
Great. Something else from somebody? Bernice.
I have a question.
Please stand up and say it loud. So
I'm loud anyways. I always pray that God will show me where He's working, that I may join in. But then within my own family, there's some people that don't believe. When I start to talk about Jesus and the gospel with them, first thing they say, I know God and God knows me. What do I do?
You slap.
Maybe I would, but no.
Bro, you don't know Bernice's story. Don't tell Bernice to slap her.
No, today's a year for
do not know Bernice, you do not tell her to slap you.
Bernice, I'm playing. Don't slap me.
When it comes to evangelizing our families, it's so important to remember that we are the most qualified evangelists to evangelize our families. We're a better evangelist in our families than Billy Graham because they know us, they trust us, they respect us, and they're more willing to listen to us than anybody else, right? In the situation you just described, it's a very common posture that a lot of family members have, that they look at us Christians and they say, okay, you think you know it all, you think that your religion is the only way, the right way. Well, I have my opinions as well, and my opinions are just as valid as yours, and I believe that God accepts me the way that I am, loves me the way that I am, blah, 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 blah. In those situations, it's always my opinion that you always ask the person, well, where are you getting that information from? Where are you getting this idea that, X, Y, and Z is true about the God that you believe in? Where are you getting it from? Right? Oftentimes, they will be stumped and realize that it's really just a figment of their imagination. It's an idol. They've created a God in their image. They say that in the beginning, God created man in his image, and man returned the favor, made him in his image, right? And so it's always important that we be very clear that our only source of authority when it comes to faith and practices is the Bible, the Word of God, right? And if in your situation, and their situation is different, they believe the Bible to be the Word of God as well, that's a great place to start looking and searching together whether or not what you're saying is truly found in Holy Writ, and if whatever they're saying is found there as well. Because opinions are opinions. The Bible tells us that our hearts are deceitful and wicked. Who can understand them? And the idea of creating gods in our own image to fit our own desires is something very, very common that we do. Even as Christians, we do that as well. And so I think that would be a good place to start.
One other thing to that, oftentimes you, for a long time, I would always, I don't know if you've said this to yourself, Christians or professing Christians are the hardest people to witness to, right? I don't think it's that difficult, it's just knowing what to say, right? And I think I like to begin, when someone tells me they're a Christian, and I suspect maybe they're not based on things they've said or what I know about them, I like to ask the question, and I'm just curious, let's say, for example, I were hit by a car and I had 2 minutes to live. What would you say to me? And let them articulate what the gospel is. See if they're even articulating it right, right? Rather than presuming that they're right. Or another way to ask it is to say, well, if I wasn't a Christian, say you're a Christian, if I'm not a Christian, what would you say to me? How can I enter the kingdom of God? And hear what they have to say. And then there might be an opportunity then to be able to then share what the gospel is. So.
That's good, but by the same token, Bernice, it means that because we're Christian and they're a family, they see everything we do outside the church. So our testimony and the way we conduct ourselves in our Christian walk has to be like, so that, you know what I'm saying? Like not perfect, of course, but like they're watching everything we do, right?
Some of them don't even read the Bible, and it says it's for going to church.
That's like both Pastor Chris and Izzy said, like, where do you get it from? Show which is in the Bible. And the book of second opinions don't count, right? So scriptures. Who else has a hand? Ozzy.
So just my question is, like, when you're sharing the gospel with someone, there's been moments where I'm sharing with someone, I'm sharing them the law, but they're not being humbled by the law, right? Whether they're self-righteous and whatnot. So in a discussion with the person, like, they're clearly, you're showing, you use the Ten Commandments, they understand it, but they just aren't being humbled by it. Do you keep pushing the law, or do you just go to the gospel of Christ? Like what, at what point, because obviously if a person, that says, you know what, yeah, that is concerning. I am a sinner before God. Then it's like open ground to share the gospel. But if they're just like, no, 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 like what should your response be there?
Bro, we don't do that, bro. We don't do that. 2 Corinthians 5:17, we don't do that stuff.
Yeah, so for me, it's rare that I won't give someone the gospel. Here's the reason why. Last night, in my own sin, I was upset with my wife. It was totally my fault. I'm leaving to come here, right? And I had a bunch of stuff. She's laughing and she knows. And she goes, do you need a bag? And I go, no, I don't need a bag. And I'm upset. I knew I needed a bag. And it wasn't until I got into my Uber where I was like, man, why not just stop being prideful, apologize, and get the bag? Because now I got to carry everything. You know what I mean? Mankind is prideful. We are pride-filled creatures. And sometimes they will not let you know that it bothers them. For instance, I remember my sophomore year of high school talking to my boy. And for years, we did football together. I'm sharing the gospel, long gospel. Anthony, you're crazy. You're crazy. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. He tells me, he finally, like years after high school ends, he hits me up. And he goes, hey, I want to go to church with you. I'm like, all right, we'll come to church. He goes, listen, man. You know all the times that I told you I wasn't listening? He goes, I was listening, man. I just didn't want to let you know that. But I thought about this, man. I thought about it over the past couple of years. I thought about this. I had to do that, share the gospel for 4 years. Another friend of mine, it wasn't until 2 years after high school, man, that it came to me. He goes, you know how I was making fun of me in high school? I said, yeah. And I told you I would never become a Christian. That's what you tell me. Dude, your Bible stupid. You will say some really bad things about God and Jesus that I will never repeat. He comes up to me and he goes, man, I'm a Christian, man. I go to church. I'm like, what? I'm like, you? And now, granted, I should not have been surprised, but I was, bro, because they seem so hard-hearted. So the only time I really won't give the gospel, bro, is if I just feel the Holy Spirit just, no. And there's sometimes I'll leave people, as they say, I'll leave them hanging over them. I'll say, okay, if you truly don't want to hear the gospel, then just understand, and this breaks my heart to tell you this, but just understand that the Bible says if you die in your sin, you'll end up in hell for eternity. And I love you so much, and I would really hate to see that happen to you. Thanks for talking. And sometimes you gotta leave them there and let the Holy Spirit deal with them. Because if they're chosen by God to be saved, the Holy Spirit will bring someone else, either you or someone else to plant the water. Does that make sense? So I would also say, don't give up. Like that man on the bus, I was terrified of him. And 2 weeks later, he's like, dude, I'm going to church and reading the Bible. So you never know. People put up the most hard-hearted exterior, and you just never know what the Holy Spirit is doing with your obedience and your witness.
Who else had a question? Young man.
So say if you work at a place that's very anti-Christian, like say, okay, I used to work at Starbucks. They didn't want us to share the gospel or talk about religion or anything because they wanted to be so likable about it from every direction. How would you go about evangelizing if the Spirit's calling you to speak to someone at your place of work?
But your employer has made it clear that you are not to do so.
Yeah.
Okay, you're itching for it?
You don't evangelize. When you're on the clock, if you evangelize, you're stealing. Because they're not paying you to evangelize, they're paying you to work. There are certain jobs where you can evangelize, right? To different degrees. But the short and simple answer is if you're on the clock, don't evangelize. You're being paid to work, not to share the gospel.
It's okay for you to use my personal experience? Yeah. So I used to work for Izzy Avila, and I agree 100%. It's not a sin. Sometimes we feel like, oh, God wants me to witness. No, God wants you to work so you can get a paycheck. Like, He never calls us to disobey authority figures to obey His will. Unless the authority figures are telling you to, like, deny Jesus. And yeah, don't listen. But one thing you could do is go out of your way to, whatever way to be kind for them, and out of genuine love. get gifts for them. One thing you also can do is invite, so I've had to invite some of my coworkers and say, hey, you know what, during lunch, let's take a lunch together. Can I treat you to lunch? And I'm very upfront, I would like to talk to you about my faith. Put it on the table. Why? Because you don't want to bait and switch them. You know what I mean? Has anyone been the multi-level marketing? You know, you get asked to come to someone's house and then they're like, this is financial freedom, which is cool if you told me up front, but I thought he was coming over just to kick it. Now I feel like, yo, why did you just tell me up front and I could have said yes or no? So I would, with the utmost, do something genuinely kind and loving for them. And then maybe just even ask them, hey, can I treat you? This is important to me. If you don't want to talk about it, that's totally fine. You've at least tried and God can use that. And if they say yes, there you go.
I echo what my brothers have said, and I'll just share just a real quick experience from my life. I worked at a graduate school of medicine for a while, where everybody's very anti-Christian. I mean, it's like you breathe the air, and it's just not. Yeah. So no one at the institution said that I couldn't, but it was more because they would all laugh. But at the same time, I think when you build relationship and rapport with even like the hardest of hearts, like people who are on the short list for the Nobel Prize in Medicine, when they share certain things like I did Alzheimer's research, so we would do research on rats and kind of trying to find the disease.
You would be surprised that if you work in a very secular, very anti-Christian environment, but everybody knows you're the Christian, when they run into hardship, you know who they're going to come to for prayer? You. When they come to like really deep, deaths in the family, just like marriage struggles, the first person that's going to come to their mind is that weird Christian at work. And that's when you take the opportunity to share. To just be the ministry of presence, to just hear them out, to be with them, to comfort them. And at the appropriate time, you share where all that comes from, right? That is Christ. Amen? Amen. A couple more questions about being here.
What kind of conversation can we have with another believer that is hesitant or doesn't want to be non-offensive in evangelism, like doesn't want to bring up hell or anything like that? What kind of conversations can we do to have to encourage the other believer, hey, these are realities that we have to present in evangelism? How can we convince them that this is a priority also that we need to present in evangelism?
Smack that fool with the Seriously, smack him as a believer.
I mean, he's your pastor, so listen to him. One thing I'll do is open up the Bible to Matthew or to Luke and just read some of Jesus' statements. Because I just got through reading the book of Matthew, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, dang, Jesus, for real? You said that? Like, he speaks about hell very, very explicitly, very openly. I was asked, what do you think about this here? People were offended. People are upset. Did Jesus do anything wrong here? What about the apostles, right? I mean, think about it. We live in a culture where we don't like to be seen as non-intellectual. We want to be seen as intellectual, smart, wise. The Apostle Paul is standing before the intellectuals of his day in Athens. And they said that some of them mocked him because he's literally preaching and he tells them God has set aside one day in which he's going to judge the world in righteousness through Jesus. And you need to repent and believe. And he's shown this by raising him from the dead. They said that some laughed about it. So one thing you want to do is say, hey, affirm the belief. None of us should set out to be offensive. Let me just say that. We talk about hell, we have to. But we shouldn't be jerks while doing it, right? We've all seen those crazy preachers on street corners and college campuses who almost seem happy to talk about hell. They're like, you're going to hell. It's like, bro, why are you smiling about that? That's a horrendous thing, right? So if people are going to get offended, it should be by the message and not the messenger. The gospel is offensive enough without me adding my own offense to it because I'm being a jerk. So affirm the fact, hey, that's good. You don't want to be offensive. But if you're being faithful to Christ, and this is where I will also take you. Jesus said something really clear in John 15. If the world hates you, know that it hated me first. No servant is greater than his master. If they hated me, they will hate you. We have Jesus' promise that the world will hate us. So I was asked, are you trying to be treated better than Jesus?
Yeah, that's good.
There's one other thing I want to add to that. Like I said, I talked to somebody in the break, and this is along the line. It's not so much of what you say, but the motivations or the lack of motivation we have to share the gospel because we're fearful. And I think I think it's a big one, right? Opening our mouth and praying that the Lord will fill it, right? And so that's something Ray Comfort says from time to time. If it is indeed fear that's keeping you from being able to open your mouth and share the gospel, he uses this example of, if you saw a child. Would you jump into a pool of frozen water, a lake of frozen water? People are like, no, why would I do that? That's. But if you saw a young child fall into it, how quickly would you go in there to get them out? See, the motivation is different now, right? So, what he encourages, don't pray for less fear, pray for more love. And that is what should compel us. That's what should animate how we view that person who we may not know the Lord.
Remember that Jesus said that he caused division, that he would separate houses, mother from daughters and fathers, and how to bring division. So the gospel is going to divide, and to be faithful, you have to share the bad news. If not the good news, it's irrelevant. Amen.
Just last thing. If you notice in the video, when I'm talking to the gentleman, I'm a Christian, I'm no longer going to hell. If you're a Christian, you're no longer going to hell. But if you notice, I put myself in that boat with him. Because each and every one of us, by nature, deserves hell. So I have no problem, because what's one of the number one objections we get from people? You Christians think you're holier than thou. Yeah. That's why I'm quick to say, listen, I've lied too. So what does that make us? Listen, you deserve hell like I do. Because even though I'm in Christ, I still deserve hell by nature, right? And more people I've noticed are willing to talk and say, okay, when I'm saying, yo, I deserve to go to hell probably more than you do. Like, I deserve it. I'm telling you, I'm a sinner and I deserve God's wrath and hell. You're not alone, bro. You're not alone. But guess what God has done for us sinners? He sent the Savior. And I've seen more people say, you know what? Like, yeah, I know I deserve hell too. Because it's like, I'm not saying, oh, you deserve hell and no, dude, we both deserve to go there. Yeah. Me more than you. Now, let me tell you as one sinner to another sinner, how you can come to be in a right relationship with God through Christ and go from there.
Amen. We got time for one more question, guys, and then we're going to clap it off. We're going to cap it off with, I think, the most interesting part of our conference. One more question, Rudy.
So, in one of the addresses, it was said that preaching the gospel, or evangelizing, is not sharing Christ or apologetics. Assuming that we're not new converts, to what extent, if any, does doctrine and apologetics play in our evangelism?
Thank you for that question. The place that apologetics has is answering objections. And then once those objections are answered, give it on the gospel side. Does that make sense? So think of it as apologetics as the defensive, but in answering the defensive component, you go offensive and give them the gospel with it. So what I like to do is, if somebody asks me a question on the reliability of the scriptures, one of the ways in which I answer that objection is talking about the reliability of the eyewitnesses of the New Testament Gospels. That the New Testament Gospels are eyewitness testimonies to Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, who he is, and that we have more evidence more reliable textual evidence of the scriptures than we do of like Shakespeare. You know, and then from there go on. Well, what is it reliable for? And then share the gospel. So apologetics is a tool for evangelism. I just wanted to make the point that it wasn't evangelism itself.
And as far as doctrine, I don't think an evangelism experience should be too deep in doctrine as long as we know the basics, right? A person that we're trying to tell about Jesus doesn't know anything about like predestination or, you know what I mean? Like any of that deep stuff. Somebody who knows that kind of stuff, we can pull them together for a Bible study or men's group or something, right? And I think that's all the time that we have. Or do you have time for one quick one? What?
He said he had a follow-up.
Oh, follow-up? Right.
And doctrine, I didn't mean like the really deep going into the weeds of that stuff, but more like, like Anthony's address was, God is creator, God is holy, and these are seminal doctrines in what we believe, right? And the role that those play in our evangelism. So it was to them.
Yeah, and I think that's why it was great that today we all got to know the basics of what that solid doctrine is and how we specifically, accurately share the message, right? Like I love what James says in the foundation that there's a specific message about a specific person and a specific purpose and what that does, right? And we have to get that right or else our message is bad. Amen?
Just two things. We'll stick around afterwards, so if you guys have any other questions, I know, sorry we couldn't get to every single question. If you want to ask more questions, come up and talk to us afterwards. We'll love to answer. And then if you missed any slides, you wanted to either take pictures or notes, let us know, and we can either email them or bring them back up so you can take a picture or do notes. So
for a small fee, no, I'm just kidding. Got to raise myself up. I'm just totally kidding. Any of us would be happy to share any parts of our entire message with you, okay? And with that, I'm going to let you take the lead, Anthony, on how you want us to do our role play.
Let's do it. So, in this evangelism conference, so many times, we come and we hear about it, and then that's it. We want, and this is the last part of our conference today, we want to give you guys about a good 10 to 15 minutes to practice going through the law and gospel, repentance and faith. God is creator, lawgiver, judge, savior, and caller. Or if you want to use a different paradigm or method or model, by all means do it. Just make sure the biblical principles are present. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask you guys to pair off into twos with someone you don't know. Yes, Bernice. Oh, so spouses? No. You got to split up. Friends? Go make a new friend. But we'll be walking around. If you have any questions, we'll be here to answer questions and talk. But yeah, we want to give you time to actually practice sharing your faith right now as we close. So we'll give you about 5 minutes. One person's the Christian, the next person's the non-Christian. And then after 5 minutes, we're going to do switch. And then you switch, and we'll come back together and then pray it out.
Don't talk about lunch. Don't talk about what you're going to do afterwards, all right?
And don't be like school. You know how it is. You're supposed to be doing an assignment, and the teacher walks by and pretend you talking about it. And then when they leave, you're like, all right, that's really what we were talking about.
If y'all are taking the time away from this, we said it was stealing.
That's right.
So this is the Lord's time, amen?
And listen, practice.
What's the opening line? What's the opening dialogue or?
However you want. Or you can even just jump in and say, hey, we've already discussed, the opening dialogue, so you can share the gospel.
I don't know you.
Okay, sorry. One person is a Christian, the other person is pretending to be the non-Christian, and they get switched.
Same
Pastor Rudy's more good with it, but yeah. We're gonna bring it in, guys. Pastor Rudy, Pastor Chris.
Yo, can everybody take a seat again?
Okay.
You guys can please start finding your seats, or I'm going to help you out. Please find your seat, or we will help you find your seat. The Bible says that every knee shall bend. Don't help us break your knee. Sorry, that's a little bit of Hey guys, has it been a good day? Yeah. Amen. Are you glad you guys gave up a part of your Saturday for this?
Yes.
Are you even more enlightened? More bold, more eager to share the gospel. You guys failed right there. You guys should be really passionate.
Yes. We're enthusiastic.
Now that you got a chance to get not just your head, but your heart wrapped around what the gospel is, to go and share it with all of your loved ones, with all of your closest friends, with your neighbors, and whoever God would appoint that you share with them. Amen? It's a good thing, guys, right? Now, if we did this every year, would you guys be interested in coming back? Yeah? People have been asking us, like, dude, we just did it this one time. Like, what are we going to do next time? I don't know. But we'll figure out how to get creative to flush out specifics of evangelism and present the gospel so that this will be something we can do all the time.
And some apologetics.